My name's John Vass from Tradeshift, and I'm here to talk to you today about supplier connectivity being the key to procurement agility. And I know that some of you are here to hear a little bit about Tradeshift as well, so I've got a couple of slides on Tradeshift at the end, and we can touch on that later. We've also got our stand up on the 5th floor, so if you do want to hear a little bit more about us, please go up and I'll be there for the rest of the afternoon. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with an example of why we need agility in procurement departments. So I'm going to take the high street retailer, and this is how used to work. So this is, for those of you who might recognize this is Porter's value chain, where basically the goods came in, so through inbound logistics and operations, value was added, and then the output was sales, marketing, and services. And somewhere in the middle here, we've got procurement, HR, IT, offering services and then creating value within that chain. But in the past, and this is how it used to work, a lot of big businesses work this way, and actually a lot of big businesses still do. These departments here, such as procurement and HR, they didn't really need to be that agile. And the reason they didn't need to be that agile is because things didn't change that often. Certainly not as often as they do today, which was fine. And everything was very, very predictable. And then this happened. So this is Moore's Law. And the concept of Moore's Law is computer power is doubling every 2 years. Okay? And the interesting thing about Moore's Law is that's been consistent over the last 30 years. So most of you here will be able to relate to that. Everybody here is probably using the Event smartphone app. And that smartphone you're using is probably more powerful than your PC was a few years ago. So you're all experiencing that. But to give you a more extreme example, the chip in my iPhone I've just taken out of my pocket, the value of it is about $300 US. And in 1994, the value of the same processor was $54 million. So I can't think of anything that used to cost $54 million and now costs $300. So this is because of Moore's Law. And it's not just computer power that's doubling. So it's not just a case of smarter phones, faster internet. This is actually bleeding out into the physical world as well, and creating exponential innovation. So in the case of, we'll take the example of what they're now experiencing is new materials coming onto the market all the time. So what they have to then do is react to producing goods from those new materials that are coming out into the marketplace, that are coming through innovation. So whereas they used to have maybe a 9-month design to deliver phase throughout their manufacturing process, that's now been condensed into something like a month in order to bring goods to the marketplace that people want and that people are asking for. And this is because of Moore's Law. And what's going to happen in 5 or 6 years' time, you're actually going to be able to print your own pair of trainers with a 3D printer. So that's where we're going, and that's indeed another conversation. So why do we need agility? We've just covered off one example. There are other examples. So hyper competition. I think the nice example is an example of hyper competition, but to give you another one, I was in Curry's PC World the other day, and I was looking at Bose sound systems for my living room, and I was speaking to the sales guy, and he actually did a really, really good job of selling me the Bose sound system. I thought, okay, you've demonstrated that well, I really like it, maybe I could get it cheaper elsewhere, but I like you, you've done a good job, I'll take one, please. So what he did is he said, okay, sir, thank you very much for the order, I'll just nip out the back and grab you one. But then he came back 2 minutes later and said, I'm really, really sorry, we're out of stock. Can I get one in for you and you come and pick it up next week? And I didn't actually say this to him, but in my head I was thinking, hell no, I'm not going to do that. I actually politely declined. But as soon as I was out of the store, I picked up my smartphone and I ordered the same Bose sound system for delivery the next day. So that is hyper competition. And 15 years ago, I would have just said, yeah, okay, order it in. The next time I'm in town, I'll go into Curry's and I'll pick up the Bose sound system, but not today. Another reason why we need agility is because we have less predictable markets and events. So the best example I can think of that is Brexit. I don't really need to say a lot more on that, other than we didn't really see it coming. It's probably changed everything, and in 2.5 years' time, that's certainly going to put a lot of pressure on procurement departments in terms of switching suppliers, and procurement departments need to be agile, need to be ready for that. And then the third reason why we need agility is exponential innovation. So we've already touched on that, because the reason we're having exponential innovation is because of Moore's law, and that's bleeding out into the physical world. So to talk through a few examples of that, people talk about driverless cars, they talk about artificial intelligence, but those concepts I think have probably been around a little while. So the most innovative thing that I could find on Google is something that scientists are producing, which is a plastic chip that's being produced on a 3D printer. And that plastic chip has got microscopic grooves in it. And when you pass sound particles over the chip, it distorts them. So then if you submerge that plastic chip into water and pass the sound particles over, it creates a hologram in the water, which is obviously really, really cool. And that's phase 1. So phase 2 is to actually be able to do that with a less viscous type of solution, so air. So if you pass the sound particles over the chip in the air, it'll create a hologram. So that's where we're going with exponential innovation. So maybe in 5 or 6 years' time, we're actually going to have holograms like you see in the Star Wars movies. And again, that's all because of Moore's law. So improving agility is a procurement problem. And we'd all like to think we were driving along in our speedboats, and if something changed, we need to do something different. We can quickly change course very cheaply, very quickly, without too much hassle. But actually, it probably feels a little bit more like this. Like driving the oil tanker, and we need to do something different, and we've got to take a really, really big, expensive turn very slowly. We might even tip over. So this is probably what's happening in most procurement departments today. So I've identified that there is a need for agility, and that procurement departments probably aren't as agile as we'd like. And I think there are 2 key reasons for this. So reason number 1 is a focus on cost. So the question is, how can procurement be more agile if the focus is only on cost? Okay, and what we mean by that is focusing on lowering the cost of transactions, focusing on squeezing our suppliers for every pound and penny that they have. And many businesses still run this way, and if you go back to the Porter's value chain and how it used to operate, that actually kind of worked, because the organizations didn't have to be that agile. So they could squeeze down the cost of transaction. Now organizations do need to be more agile, and because of Moore's law, and we've got a new cost in 2016, and that's the cost of change. So you might save yourself a few pence by squeezing your suppliers. The cost of change can run into millions. And I believe that should be the focus of procurement departments moving forward. And if you still operate in the old way, essentially what you're doing is you're concreting your process. So concrete's cheap, and if you're building a car park, it's going to stay a car park, you probably do want to build that out of concrete because it's cheap and you're not going to change it. However, if that car park's going to become something else, that's a lot of concrete to rip out. It's very, very expensive. So what we're doing is we're moving away from the cost-focused supply chain to the value-focused supply chain. And in the value-focused supply chain, we're focusing on things like innovation. We're focusing on investing in our suppliers, in sustainability, so they're providing a better service to us, and so they're producing more innovative products out there in the marketplace. And really the opposite is true of a cost-focused supply chain, where you're looking to squeeze your supplier. They are then looking to, you're probably looking to pay them late, perhaps, and they're providing you with a non-optimal service because their margins are being jeopardized. So that's the first reason, and that's around what I believe is the focus on cost in the wrong area. And then reason number 2 is around connectivity complexity. So again, there's a question, how can procurement be more agile when connectivity is so complex? So we all know that supply chains are essential, but they are very, very complex things. And I found an example here of a medium luxury goods manufacturer. And this little diagram here, somewhere in there is the luxury goods manufacturer, and these are all their supply chain points. And then and these lines are how their all linked up together. So it's very, very big, heavy, complex, but that's the nature of it. And it's like dragging around a big fishing net behind you. So if you use the boat analogy again, you're dragging around this fishing net. It's very, very difficult to twist and turn, and it is an issue. So that's our medium goods manufacturer. But I also found another business that operates almost in exactly the same way as this. So the diagrams are almost identical. But the interesting thing is this business was trading in the year AD 398 in the Roman Empire. So the Romans, they obviously the cornerstone of our society. They were great innovators for their time, but 2,400 years later, we probably should be doing a little bit of a better job than they were doing. But there is a good reason why we're not, and that reason is it's not a technology problem. It's a Roman problem. So businesses are still operating in their own silos, with their own culture, their own language, their own internal communications. And what we're actually doing not very well at is communicating throughout their businesses. So communication between businesses can often be quite poor, and this is resulting in low agility. And here's my first of my little Tradeshift plugins here. But a true supplier network like Tradeshift does solve these problems. And again, we'll talk about that very shortly. So those are my thoughts, and I always think it's better to get a second opinion. So we've done a little bit of work with the consultancy firm, the Hackett Group, and we've gone out to the marketplace and interviewed various organizations in terms of what their priorities are, their priorities in procurement, and to try and find out a little bit more about those departments. So one of the things that we found out is that innovation is a high priority. Now, this didn't surprise me in any way because of Moore's law and that bleeding out into the physical world. We are in an era of innovation, exponential innovation, where we're going to have our holograms soon. So innovation is a high priority, and the whole industry agrees on it. And that probably doesn't really surprise me. That's not surprising anyone really, except I think maybe the Roman guy would have said the same thing 2,400 years ago. So yeah, that was high on the priority list. And then if we look specifically at procurement departments, there are 4 main priorities that came out of the study. So the first one was to reduce and avoid purchase costs. So are we going back to our old Porter's value chain, how big businesses used to work? Maybe we are. But that was priority number 1, and again, not a total surprise. Priority 2 was to elevate the role of procurement to a trusted advisor. I'm sure the procurement department would like to say that. So there's, again, no surprises there. Priority number 3, increase spend influence. Yeah, okay. Again, it's not surprising me at all. And actually, when I think back to the Roman guy, I think he maybe even have those 3 things on the top of his priority list 2,400 years ago. However, the new thing is improve agility. And improve agility wasn't on this list a few years ago. And the reason it is now is because of Moore's law and the exponential innovation that we're seeing. And it will creep up higher in that priority list as we move towards 2020. So if we're looking specifically then at agility as the new thing that's appearing on our research list, what Hackett do is this is paid for consultancy. They can come out to your organization and they can take you through a checklist to see whether you are high agility or low agility within various departments, specifically in the procurement department. So this is a little bit of a freebie. You normally have to pay for this. Please come and see me afterwards for the slides, and you can actually take yourself through this checklist to see if you are a low agility or high agility organization. But the results that came back were perhaps not surprising, but I'd probably like to think that I work in a high agility organization. I think we'd all like to think that we're quite high agility in most of the things that we do. The results that came back, actually most organizations are still operating low agility, especially within the procurement department. So then there's one level to dig deeper on this, and it's actually why. And when we get under the skin of it, a lot of this lack of agility is to do with connectivity and a broken source-to-pay process. So we start here. We've got our were goods received or not? they may have been received. If we don't know about it, then the supplier doesn't get paid. It causes a breakdown of communication in the value chain. We've also got things like real-time supplier master data missing. If we don't have the correct information about our suppliers and ways to contact them, how can we communicate with them? And then within the procurement function itself, we found there's not enough suppliers providing catalogue content. So if you don't know what they've got for sale, how can you buy it? POs as well aren't being sent digitally. They're still being sent in the old way via PDF, even via paper. That slows down the whole source-to-pay process, and it isn't efficient a way for a supplier to be able to deal with your request. And then right at the end, we've got the invoicing side as well. So are supplier invoices digital or not, or are they still coming through on PDF, and even worse, a piece of paper that's costing us a lot of money to process? So this is how we found the connectivity in the source-to-pay process is broken. So conclusions for the study. The world is changing at a pace that we haven't seen before. I think we'd all agree with that. Procurement is a fundamental business process that has to now, in 2016, be agile. Cost focus and complexity make agility in procurement very, very challenging for the reasons that we've talked about. However, all of these things can be addressed by making a decision to adopt the latest technologies to help you simplify that complexity and improve agility. So that leads us on to talking about how we do that at Tradeshift. So Tradeshift is obviously something that I'm very, very passionate about, but we can address all of those things within our organisation. So just to give you a high-level overview of who we are, this is our mission statement. So the Tradeshift mission is to be the supplier network and platform to connect all companies in the world on one single platform. And within that, we want to provide value to everybody participating in the B2B process. So that's buyers and suppliers within that chain. We also believe the future of business software is flexible and open, a cloud-based platform facilitating document exchange and collaboration, and we strive to deliver a modern, state-of-the-art user experience. So you can actually try this out for yourself. If you go to go.tradeshift.com, you can create yourself a Tradeshift account in the same way that you'd create a LinkedIn account. You can set up your profile, you can even pretend to be a supplier, we don't mind, and you can go and check that out for yourselves. So we've talked about the network here, the social media style interconnected buyer-supplier network. That's the core of our offering. And then within that, we've also got various apps that we produce to leverage the power of that network. So we've got an app called Tradeshift Buy, which is an e-procurement application. We've got an app called Tradeshift Pay, which is an e-invoicing application. We have a supply chain risk management app called Tradeshift Risk, but also we have an app store. So in the same way as on your smartphone, you've got an app store for third parties to write applications, that's what we do at Tradeshift as well. And we have third parties writing applications to leverage the power of that social media style interconnected supplier-buyer network. And because of that business model, because of that social media style interconnectivity, what we're doing is we're unlocking value from all categories of suppliers. So if you're talking about e-invoicing and e-procurement, traditionally, you would probably connect with around about 20% of your suppliers. And at Tradeshift, we want you to connect with as close to 100% of your suppliers electronically as possible. So what we're looking to do is that 80% that usually fell by the wayside, we're actually looking to connect those with your ERP system. And this works. So here's our example from so we started off with they were not very agile, but they didn't need to be. And they do need to be much more agile because all these new materials are coming to the marketplace, and they've gone from a design to deliver period from 9 months to around a month, maybe 3 weeks. And now they are transacting with 97% of their suppliers electronically. So actually 74% of suppliers were onboarded on Tradeshift within 7 months. And they did have another stab at this initially with a previous service provider, one of our competitors, and they managed to get 350 suppliers connected over a period of 4 years. With Tradeshift, It took us 7 months to get to 74%. The total is 97%, which is over 5,000 suppliers. So now they've got all those connections with all the suppliers. They're probably one of the most agile procurement departments in the world. Okay, so I'm just being told I've got 5 minutes left for questions. So if you've got any questions on the subjects covered today, whether that is supplier connectivity, procurement agility, Tradeshift, me, whatever you'd like to ask, please go ahead. Yeah, at the back.
Hi. Can I ask that on that last slide with the graph, what do you think made the difference with the adoption rates? Your user interface being easier to work with, or something else?
So I think the main thing is the business model. And the reason why our supplier adoption rates are the highest in the industry is because, well, first of all, it's free for suppliers. Okay, it's just like going on and creating a LinkedIn or a Facebook account. You go on there, you create a profile, you say who you are, put all your information in, and it's free. So why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you want to be part of that? And they can do it on them. And in terms of, you mentioned user interface, they can do it on their mobile phone, they can do it on their tablet. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a desktop. So it's easy for them to do that. Also, in addition to that, we actually take a proactive approach to onboarding suppliers. So that's our business model. Our business model is the network, and people want to leverage that network. So in the way that Facebook has probably the most powerful network on earth and is one of the most valuable companies on earth, we're doing the same thing within the supply chain. And to assist with that, we actually take a proactive approach to supplier onboarding. We use modern marketing techniques to get people on board. Even though they're not paying for it, they still need a little bit of a nudge, need a bit of a pull sometimes. And that's why we have organizations like trading up to almost 100% of their suppliers versus a previous, I think it was 14%. Okay. Was there a question around here? Yeah.
Funny enough, that was my question as well.
Okay.
So do you do any testing then to make sure that you've got the right connection at the supplier?
So the way it works, it's like you're using LinkedIn. So you have an account on Tradeshift, and then you choose who you want to link in with. So you can say, I want to link in with you because I might want to sell you something, or actually I want to link in with you because I might want to buy something, I might want to hire you, or actually I might want you to headhunt me. So there's all different reasons for linking in with them. And the control between the accounts is through something called a business firewall. So and then you can set, so the same way you can set your privacy settings on Facebook, you can do something similar, but for business reasons with Tradeshift. So you're actually controlling that flow of information. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
It does. Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else at all? Yeah.
So fascinating result. Do you know what business benefit that's driven to Monkey?
So in terms of, I don't have the hard cost numbers.
It's not necessarily cost, but in what areas have they benefited from a 97% improvement in agility or connection with their supply chain?
So, first of all, they're basically not receiving any paper anymore. That's the first thing. So you've got a hard cost saving around, whether it's outsourced or it's in-house, you've got some sort of function that's dealing with incoming invoices. So that they've taken all that cost out of their business virtually. But the big thing is the agility. So it's because now they're able to, if they need to change suppliers, they can do so really, really quickly. Or if they need to source goods from elsewhere, they can do it. That used to take them a long, long time to be able to get all the connections in place to do that. They can, with Tradeshift, they can now pretty much do that instantly. They can link in with another supplier. So let's say somebody, although they've already done it, so they produce a football boot. Have you seen the new molded football boots with like snake skin? So somebody's produced that material, and all of a sudden that's gone viral on Facebook. And that they have to do something about that. They have to produce football boots out of that material. That's the next big thing, and they've got to do it quickly. So they've got to go and link in with that supplier, and then start transacting with them. So I think that's probably the biggest benefit, which is the agility part. Yeah.
And at the risk of sounding like my dad when I got my exam results, what are the 3% you couldn't get on with? No.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, really good question. I just think we have to, maybe accept that some organisations just won't do it. Not everybody will do it. We provide them with a user interface. All they have to do, we set the account up for them. All they have to do is go and flip the PO to an invoice on a mobile phone, but they won't. That's a simple answer. And they insist on sending a PDF or insist on sending a piece of paper. And that's your 3%. We may be able to turn that into, into 2%. We might be able to turn it into 1%. We'd love to turn it into 100%. But some things are beyond our control, and that's certainly one of them.
So does your system handle PDFs then?
We do actually, yes. There is a way we can do that, and also the scanning of invoices. We don't do that ourselves because that's a commodity, but we have various partners. Swiss Post is one of them, for example, whereby these pieces of paper go to a digital mailroom. They're scanned, OCR'd, and put into Tradeshift to plug the gap. Yeah. Any other questions at all? No? Okay, right. Well, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of the event.